Thank you. Chancellor Peister does send his regrets for not being here this evening. I'm the Director of Program and Policy Development for what we term on our campus as the Fort Ord Project for the University of California. The Santa Cruz campus of the University of California has taken the lead on this project, but it in fact represents a commitment by the system across the state, which includes all the campuses in some capacity or another, to come work with us to create a science and technology center on the former Fort Ord. What I want to tell you briefly about is sort of why Santa Cruz is doing this and why the University of California is doing this, what it is we're really doing, and some of the short-term near steps for us. The reason why we got involved in the reuse of Fort Ord at all, it's about 35 miles away from our campus, and some people on our campus, quite frankly, think that's a long drive. It's actually a very beautiful drive, but it is a long drive for us. And I think it started because, in part, I think, Congressman Farr, your vision for this region really becoming a world center for things that we do in education and research around the Bay. I'm not sure if you realize that the concentration of scientists and researchers around Monterey Bay in things like marine sciences really probably equals or surpasses many places in this country and perhaps the world. You have not only the new CSU-MB campus and the University of California Santa Cruz at the north end of the bay, but we also have Stanford's Marine Station, the Hopkins Center in Pacific Grove. We have MBARI, David Packard's aquarium, but also the Research Institute. You have NOAA, a federal agency. You have the Naval Postgraduate School, and many other activities around the bay, both public and private, investing in things such as that. And I remember when the congressman, I first moved to the region, talked about this being a world center. So that's one of the things that have drawn us to this quite frankly, piece of real estate along what we refer to as a crescent around Monterey Bay of excellence in education and research. And if you remember back to when the base closed, and many of you who sat in a room and others who aren't here, trying to decide what should happen to this base, the concept of MBEST was created, Monterey Bay Education, Science, and Technology. And it really was reflective of the regional assets that could be drawn upon to create a reuse for Fort Ord. And that's what spun the belief and the thinking support for CSU-MB, and what really drew UC into the picture. With the CSU-MB educational focus and the University of California coming alongside to create a science and technology area or center, which we actually now term the MBEST Center, we are going to be bringing the private sector partners to the region to work in what could be considered an education and research complex of these institutions coming together. It's more than UC and CSU-MB. It really is going to draw upon and work with those other regional institutions that I named that are around the bay. So what you have in your backyard, and we are actually in the county in the marina area, but adjacent to you here, is what really will be a center for this regional center of excellence. And we believe a place that already is being looked at around the country and actually is getting some international attention in what's developing around Monterey Bay. So at Fort Ord, what will MBEST be? MBEST will be the University of California's effort to facilitate the interaction of those institutions around the bay and draw private sector companies. We have about 1,100 acres of land that we currently own that were conveyed to us from the Army last year, or will soon be conveyed to us. Of that 1,100 acres, about 600 of those will be maintained in habitat in perpetuity and managed by a part of the University of California called our Natural Reserve System. And we have reserve systems or parcels around the state. It really is an opportunity to understand the natural habitat of this region. It makes it so spectacular. We also will then have about 400 acres that will be developed, and that will be adjacent to the former Fritchie Airfield, now the Marina Airfield, and in the county by Blanco and Reservation Road and overlooking the bluff into the Salinas Valley. On those 400 acres, we expect up to, and the projections go from 5 million to 7 million square feet of development. That is, I think as Les White and Steve Arvizo both said, over a 30 to 50 year time frame. It's a long build-out. We expect at some point, we currently have actually 16,000 square feet built. The rest of it's unbuilt. We have a couple of temporary buildings, but we have one permanent building and one soon to be conveyed to us, another 4,000. So we may have 20,000 square feet. The first building that we currently own, we are in negotiations or finalizing leases with companies that are doing things in environmental technologies or communications technologies, things like that. In fact, the areas we will be focusing on in this region, utilizing the strengths of the institutions around the Bay, will be in biotech, agriculture being one natural opportunity, another being marine sciences, things that the Hopkins Marine Station is doing. Another area, second one, would be in environmental technologies, working with institutions such as the University of California and MBARI, the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institution, for instance, looking at instrumentation of the and understanding measurements in the environment and the cleanup opportunities. A third market area that we will be working with will be information technologies, looking at the opportunities linked to what's happening in Scotts Valley. If we really think of what we're doing here at Fort Ord as an opportunity to catalyze an entire region, more than the piece of the real estate right adjacent to us, we have software and hardware opportunities coming from Scotts Valley, and of course, you know, the Silicon Valley, but taking what works for us from that and making it work for us down here. The fourth area, and it's always hard to say this word, but there's probably a better word to use, but edutainment, really looking at that interface between entertainment and education, the multimedia opportunities, and a lot of things that CSU Monterey Bay will be doing that we can work with them on, but looking for the private, the corporate side of that to bring new jobs and new tax dollars to the region. We'll be focusing on creating a research and development center with the private sector. So companies that will come will have a research and development component to those companies. They may include also then light manufacturing, but it will not be just a research institute. It will be something that really brings the corporate side to the region. Our next steps are really a variety of things. Immediately trying to figure out the business development side of what we're doing. We've done some initial master planning work. We'll be finalizing our master plan. We'll be looking at our financing issues. Our funding to date has been Department of Commerce, EDA dollars, but we fully intend to move off the federal dollars, the state dollars, and move into the private sector funding. Leasing and moving forward and making what we have viable and manageable. Something that we're going to spend a lot of time over the next year focusing on our market development activities. And this is something that I think working with closely with the City of Seaside and the other partners at the Fort Ord Reuse will be understanding what this region clearly has to offer to the industry and private sector. Sort of who's here already, what are we doing, what kind of new companies can we develop, what kind of companies would be attracted here. Really broadening the strength of this region and the market opportunities, but also the visibility of the region. We truly believe it has one of the world's best concentrations in those areas I mentioned, like the marine sciences. The language capability of the Monterey Peninsula are things that really are an asset to us, but now telling people about it so that they'll want to be here. And finally, I think their next step is really looking to build and working relationships and stronger collaborations with everything from Fora through the cities of Marina and Seaside in particular. And I think as we look at your plans, and we'll hear in a minute, Mayor, more about them, the things that we've heard that you're thinking about with your golf courses and your housing developments really provide an opportunity, I think, to help us attract the corporations to our center that we're hoping to bring here. And the package, the Marina Airfield and the plans for the City of Seaside really make it, with the CSUMB, a place that really will be an attractor. So I'll be pleased to answer questions when you're ready.
Thank you, Laura. One of the
first phase is an 87 acres, and that should be completed by June of next year. And the remaining phase, phase 2, was 795 acres, and that ought to be completed sometime in '97. We have transferred the former Troop Medical Clinic. It is now a veterans clinic, half of which is being used, the downhill side of it being used by the university as a student health clinic. But the owner of the building is licensed from the Army to the Veterans Administration, and we are seeking to get title for the Veterans Administration. It will be a veterans clinic. They will have title to it, and they will allow the university to be a tenant of their building. And they are working those things out, but that building is now being used as a veterans medical clinic. The golf courses. There was something that I hadn't got to yet. I saw Lance over there, and I knew I better talk about golf courses. The golf courses are unusual in the sense of properties that we've been thinking about, because they are money-making. They are a enterprise that makes money, as the Wendy's does on the base, as the commissary does, and so on, as the bowling alley does. And those enterprises that are run on military bases, the revenue derived, the profits derived from the running of those activities go back into helping support the health and welfare and morale of active duty military. They support the cost of child care centers. They support the ability to get discounts at recreational places if they don't have their own. And this is essentially what is done in military bases all over the United States. So the Army, or the Air Force, or whomever owns those bases, is very concerned when you're going to sell them, because the Base Closure Commission recommended, not only recommended, but said you shall sell the golf courses at Fort Ord. And the question then is, where does that money go? If it just goes into the BRAC account, it doesn't really benefit the social service needs of active duty military. So I've been asked to carry legislation, and have gotten that through the House of Representatives. And Barbara Boxer, the senator from California on the other side, has gotten it through the Senate. And it is in the defense authorization bill that says that when those golf courses are sold, that money shall remain in part in the health and morale welfare account for those purposes. And that, I think, satisfies the needs. We also say in the legislation that they shall sell those golf courses to the city of Seaside. As Seaside can tell you better than I can of how they envision to not only invest in those golf courses and invest in the buildings, but also hope to have a switch of property, vacant property, which the military would love to have with better housing on it, which Seaside will provide in turn for the property surrounding the golf courses. So that's in process, and I know people have been a little bit concerned that it's taking longer than we originally thought. But remember, it's the only golf course in America in any base that's being sold right now. So we are way ahead of the rest of the country. I think I'll stop there. And the other presenters here tonight, before we get into some comments, and I can get into other issues other than Fort Ord if you want in the Q&A. But we also have a presentation from Steve Arbusu from the California State University of Monterey Bay, sort of the original visionary about how you create a new campus in the California State campus system that will meet the needs not only of this community, in this region, in this state, but in this nation, and perhaps this world, of how you develop a university that is really challenging the needs to prepare people for the workplace and the community of the 21st century. And so I'd like to turn it over to Steve, with Mayor's permission, for a quick presentation on the CSUMB Monterey Bay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Councilman. Thank you. It's really a pleasure to be here to share information about the new university with the Seaside community. This really is a dream being realized, and it's a great historical moment, I think, in the area of base closures and transition to civilian use. The Cal State University Monterey Bay story is one that would not even be possible were it not for significant leadership from the various communities that surround Fort Ord. We had significant elected official support and leadership in the planning surrounding the closure and in the setting of the planning assumptions for the new complex at Fort Ord that would sponsor the educational institutions. So it really is, as President Clinton said in front of 23,000 people, it is a wonderful story of government at work and of people coming together to realize something that they believe in and that they value for their families and for their communities. On July 1st, the decision, 1991, the decision was made to close Fort Ord. It took several years to decommission everything and to begin the process of conveying property. On July the 8th, 1994, that was 16 months ago, the federal government, Secretary of the Army, conveyed the property to the state of California for the CSU portion of the property. And that same month, we got approval of the university from the legislature and federal support, thanks to advocacy by Congressman Farr and a number of other community leaders and elected officials, so that in 16 months, we moved to acquiring the property, to hiring a president, getting our deans in place, hiring the initial faculty and the second cycle of faculty, and moving from having 6 employees to over 200 employees. And we opened the doors to the university on August the 24th to 660 students, and about 35% of those students are from the immediate region. And we expect more of our students in the future to be from the immediate region. We opened the university with fewer than 22 buildings being remodeled, and we have expended over $15 million in construction to remodel those buildings, another $14 million in process through phase 2. My colleague John Miller, the Director of Operations, Design, and Construction, in a moment will show you some slides and some figures here. But the combination of construction and operation budgets by June 30th, 1996, that's less than 2 years from the time we acquired the property, will realize a net of $73 million being expended on this university. And research has shown us that for every dollar spent in a state university, there are 3 spin-off dollars in the local community. For every dollar spent in the operation budget of a university to educate a learner, 16.8%, or $16.8 are returned to the tax rolls, most of those being in the immediate region in proximity to that university. So the prognosis here is for us to start small, carefully, creatively, and to build this thing carefully with a lot of community input so that this university is a resource to surrounding communities and so that there is accessible higher education to everybody in the region. That's basically the approach that we're taking. And
which provides the funding that we use to provide the training that we serve the community. We've been serving this community and in Monterey County for the last 10 years. And of course, with the able assistance of our own Senator Farr, we are able to get the funding. Hopefully, as you know, the federal budget is in big question at this time, and there have been a lot of cuts, and we have really suffered staff-wise, and we've had to streamline things, but we're still functioning and we're still helping as many persons in the community as we can. When we had the base closure at Fort Ord, many of the personnel that were laid off or were due to be laid off from Fort Ord were focused through our agency And with the assistance of JobLink and through a special window, we were able to help as many people either to relocate in other jobs, in federal jobs, or in jobs in the private industry. So we're functioning and we are doing very well.
About 2 weeks, 5 large laboratory rooms within this building will come on in about 2 weeks. Similarly with the music building. As phase 1 is really made up of this main quadrangle, with the media building, the dining facility, the classroom buildings, and several spaced out buildings. But the main quadrangle is where our activity took place during phase 1. Renovated about 200,000 square feet. We had the usual infrastructure concerns, upgrading electrical to gas, the roads, the water system, making some repairs. But there are a couple items I want to point out to you. Number one, this building right here is our communications equipment room. Fiber optics runs down 6th Avenue and enters that building. At a cost of over $1.5 million, we put the backbone in for fiber optics for the complete campus for the next 5 years. So the backbone for fiber optics is in place. All of the buildings, all 21 buildings, have been wired for data systems, fiber optics, communications, and cable TV. You walk into a building, about every 10 feet, there's an outlet for each one of those items. There's electronic security system has been added throughout the campus. When you walk into, say, the multimedia building, it's just jam-packed, full of expensive equipment, just packed with it. So we elected to come up with a security system, electronic security system, card access system, a control system for the buildings that contain critical amounts of equipment. One other item I want to point out is Americans with Disability Act. The university has taken a position to want a barrier-free campus. Whenever there's a code interpretation regarding the handicapped, if it gets a little fuzzy, we always lean towards the handicap. Case in point, there was some discussion about whether we need an elevator or not for the dorm. We added an elevator. Phase 1 was $15 million, thanks to the federal government. Phase 1 was a third of the main garrison. Thank you to the U.S. Army for conveying that to us, with 1.66 matching coming from the state. Phase 2, we started design as we speak. Phase 2 is on the same program. We'll start construction a little earlier, maybe in March, but we still have to have critical buildings ready for 1996 school year, which is late August. And what buildings are we going to work on? It will be the dormitory, these 5 buildings right here. The 3-story buildings, we'll renovate those because we expect another 450 resident-type students to join us, so we'll resurrect those buildings. We'll do some more work on our communication center. This area here will be performing arts in this building, video, movie production and post-production instruction in this building right here. And these 3 buildings here will be the visual arts people who will do murals, sets, computer applications of advertising, etc. And in addition, we'll add larger classrooms up in this area. And of course, we'll once again complete the fiber optics to each of those buildings. Phase 2 is $14 million granted from the federal government, $1.55 million from the state. In the subsequent 5 years, just very briefly, 190 buildings will be conveyed to us. We will renovate 105 of those.
We need to open a cafeteria, and I was up there today, and I understand that that's open to the public. Anybody who wants to go up and see the cafeteria. And next to it is a bookstore, and they were all saying we should all come up there and buy our seats and gifts up there because we need to promote Seaside to new universities. So those are in operation. The other academic institution that'll be at Fort Ord is the University of California. The University of California has 9 campuses in California. And you all know the names of the big ones, UCLA and University of California, Berkeley, and Santa Barbara, and our local one is Santa Cruz. And Santa Cruz campus has acquired some property in the city of Marina, next to the Marina Airport, which the university will manage as a research center. And this is the only place in California where both the University of California and the California State University system are located next to each other. It allows tremendous opportunity because the University of California is the only PhD granting public entity in California. PhDs can be granted from private colleges, but not from private universities, but not from California State Universities. So this allows people who will be graduating and doing their master's degree work at California State University to essentially go next door to work on their PhDs. And it's, I think that the opportunity here is the dreams are limitless in what we can do in providing academic education for this region and for the state. With us tonight to explain the role of the University of California at Santa Cruz is Laura Lee Martin, who is here representing Chancellor Feaster.